city is to be part of a great art culture, you know, and so it was mentioned that this is an economic imperative for the city as part of that whole collection of things that people expect. Is if you're going to be in a city, that's one of the things that makes it different than other places. And so the thing I would say about Atlanta is that it would be interesting to me for Atlanta to decide what it wants to be. You know, like from an art perspective, you know, like I think, you know, the idea that it's the center of arts in the South is there's a lot to that, and maybe that it already is, but just the whole conversation about what that would mean, and what that might result in would be an interesting, you know, thing to work on.
I think people are looking to Atlanta right now to see us do all of that. When we had Jason from the NEA and Art Place, the two biggest placemaking centers in the country here, the only thing they had on their list to see was the Beltline. They were willing to see other things, but that was the first thing on the list was to see the Beltline. People are looking to us to see how we integrate that into these big projects, and so it would be our fault if we missed that vote.
And there's a relationship between infrastructure and all of that with public art. I mean, I get to have the opportunity to go around the country and share our story with the Beltline to a lot of people, and you tell the story of the Lantern Parade, and it blows people away. I mean, you know, you go from 200 to 60,000 people in the course of a handful of years, literally taking their homemade lanterns and walking down the trail in the dark. It's not, I mean, it's amazing, and it is. But they're blown away by that. But it's the kind of thing where it illustrates a pent-up demand for a cultural life and arts in this city that people haven't been given, and that shows that they're willing to go out there and act for. And the Beltline plays a role in that, in being the infrastructure for that thing. The parade would not have happened without the Beltline. And so by investing in public space and the opportunity for that event and lots of other opportunities, and we could elevate that role and see what happens, see what people do, see what the community does with public art.
I just wanted to add, having been at the Beltline when the idea was conceived by Freddie Lewis and some of the people on his team, it was not really, and part of it was intentional for art, how do we get the art community engaged, but the other piece of it was how do we create a vehicle for people to know where the Beltline is? Because people would say, where is the Beltline? People didn't know where it was. And so the outdoor temporary art exhibit was a way to get people to get out of cars and walk the hiking trails, because at that time there were no paved trails. The East Side Trail didn't exist. And it was how do you get people to start exploring the 22-mile loop before it's the 22-mile loop. And there really wasn't a lot of money for it. And so, you know, the people that were engaged at the grassroots got together and said, how could we do this as cheaply as possible, because there's not a lot of funding for it that would be meaningful. And it caught on, but I do think it's funding, and also there wasn't anyone policing it, saying you can do the Lantern Parade or not do it. So no one asked permission. Some artists said this would be a cool thing to do. The staff said, we have a little bit of money, let's do it. Now, as the art has evolved and become more popular, then people want to police it and say, well, I need to decide if that's good art, and there has to be funding and freedom of expression for art and culture to be cultivated.
I like that language around policing. I was just in a conversation a couple days ago around the Beltline as a canvas for public art, whether or not it's a vehicle for creative expression. When you see the success of the Beltline Parade, that's not because this is a canvas for public art. It's a vehicle for creative expression that people want to express in our community.
Maria?
Yeah, Maria, supporter report on the Atlanta Business Chronicle. And as a journalist, I always have two questions, not one, right? My first one is for Commissioner Keene. I know you have some ideas of what you would like to see your department become and how you would like to change the city. If you can share with us specifically how you want to see the planning department change or reorient the city. And then the next question is broader for anyone who wants to jump on it. Most of the conversation tonight has been about the city of Atlanta, Yet when people talk about Atlanta on a national basis, they think of the region. So I'm seeing some bipolar, as long as we're talking about character trait. Maybe it's a teenager that's bipolar. I don't know. Can y'all talk about how one can spread the message of good urban design, people versus cars, throughout the region, and not just have it be a City of Atlanta conversation?
Well, on me, and I know everybody probably has to eat dinner, so I'm going to, real quickly, the planning department needs to change a lot. The first thing will be the permitting office, which is called the Office of Building, which we'll start on that first, because it needs a lot of help if you've ever been there. To make it a highly attuned to customers, whether you just need a fence or you're building a 40-story building. That's where we've been spending about 72% of my time since we got here, so that'll get going soon. But then remaking the whole thing around the issues I brought up earlier, urban design, transportation, and streets. Where we'll have a lot of emphasis are urban design, design overall, transportation and streets, and then the third one is really reform and completely remaking our zoning in Atlanta.
I'll speak to the regional thing. I think that, most people live their lives without any real consideration for where the jurisdictional boundaries of the city of Atlanta are, and that's a good thing. And we're a city in the broad sense first, a region, and I think that most people sort of that's the way they think. We're talking about it because that's sort of the context of the conversation, but. I don't know what the answer is exactly. I think there's lots of opinions regionally about what the future of the city is in the region. But what I do know is that I live on Cross Street, and every afternoon and every weekend there are people from Cherokee and Gwinnett and Coweta and wherever else unloading their dogs and strollers onto the Atlanta Beltline. And they're coming and they're spending their money in their day in the city of Atlanta, and they're leaving with a very different perspective of what that kind of lifestyle is all about, and it's all very positive. And they're also going home with their own ideas about how they're going to transform their communities. And I think that the role of catalyst for the Beltline, for sure, obviously, I don't want to talk about only that, but it's catalyzing not only the physical form, the changes in the city of Atlanta, but it's also changing the way that we think about Atlanta regionally and what those expectations are for our future, not only in the city, but across the region.
I lose all my sleep about the arts, thinking about where people live. And 90%, I'm Metro Atlanta, and 90% of the population lives outside the city of Atlanta. Only 86% of our arts assets are in the city of Atlanta. When we're talking about transportation, are people going to come to work in the city of Atlanta, go back home, and come back in to see some sort of programming? That's where I lose all my sleep. But when I look to success for public art in our region, I'm looking at Swanee and Hapeville, Swanee's got the only 5% for public art in the state. So I'm seeing some very bright spots in the rest of the region.
Awesome. Hi, I'm Molly Reed Wu with Planet Atlanta, and I gotta say tonight I feel more hopeful than I felt in a year. It's great to see this many people, and thank you for the Museum of Design, and thank you for all of you. It's great to have Commissioner King, and you have so many great ideas, and Atlanta has fantastic resources. Just looking behind me, you see 400 talented people with great ideas. And I hope that we have more of a forum to bring them to you and together. Right now in Atlanta, I think it would be great to make MODA $1 for a ride and run it 24 hours a day, and get the state to pay for it. And ideas like this would be really good. And also we could bring the Georgia Music Hall of Fame to where the Gulch is and bring a whole bunch of tourists into here and get that out of the vault. But anyway, right now though, before the end of the year, we're looking at plans to tear down the Georgia Dome, plans to sell the Civic Center, plans to sell Underground Atlanta. Gosh, what else? Tons. So is there a way to put a moratorium on losing our assets in the city that took decades to build up until we get our act together?
I mean, the Civic Center site, the Atlanta site, are gonna be great, and they haven't gone anywhere yet. They're just getting started. I've been meeting with the Civic Center developer, Wilson, with the other Atlanta people, and, I mean, that's part of why I'm here, is to work on this project. The Georgia Dome, I don't know, I want to see a football game there, it's terrible. I think, so I'm not sorry to see it go. But I think that that you should have great optimism on those projects. Those have to be the projects in Atlanta that set a new standard downtown for urbanism, architecture, design, all these things, no question about it.
And I was just gonna say that I think the Ponce is an example of a building that was given to the private sector.
Mhm.
And I think that to me it's about creating healthy incentives for good behavior.
You did a great job, I wanted to thank you too.
No, I think that when you look at all these different projects, I think it's before Tim was here, Jamestown signed something like 42 different legal documents with the city of Atlanta to purchase the building in the city. And so it's not an easy thing. I'm sure we talked about that earlier, but what happened is the leadership of the city decided that they were going to try to create incentives for the outcome they wanted, and which was to catalyze this 2 million square foot vacant building. And the stories Mayor Reed, before he was elected to his first term, spent a lot of time in New York, and loved Chelsea Market. And the stars aligned in that the owner of that facility happened to be this 30-year-old Atlanta-based company. And so it really came together in a really magical way. But I think the private sector has a very vital role in bringing change about.
I was just thinking, now we finally got this commissioner and planning, and let's plan some. That'd be good. I mean, we got so many good ideas coming through. Anyway, thank you.
Hi, my name is Bennett Bryan. I'm here as a member of the City Council, Atlanta City Council's Neighborhood Arts Advisory Group, affectionately referred to as the NAG Committee. Petition to get that changed. I lost, but I appreciate that y'all have brought up the idea of public art as part of a city planning process. Obviously, I think that it's important to have community input. It's important to have artists have their sort of First Amendment rights. I'm on the committee primarily to represent the interests of artists, art organizations, and specifically Living Walls. But we have our last meeting on Monday evening at 6 o'clock in the law department, and I am afraid that we are dangerously close to the committee recommending that there be some sort of moratorium put on all murals in Atlanta if they're not specifically commissioned by the city of Atlanta itself through the Office of Cultural Affairs. So, Mr. Key, my question is, if you are free on Monday evening,
This is the NAG committee?
this is the NAG committee, so I'm nagging you right now. But if you are free on Monday night, I would appreciate if you would stop by, and I think that,
Why are you in the city attorney's office for that meeting?
well, that's just where they decided to hold the meetings.
Okay.
Their conference room, I guess, is nice and fun. But otherwise, there is a member of the law department that is there, sort of advising the committee as it comes
Who
up
is
with
that?
recommendations.
Sorry.
Let's see, her name is, I believe it's Samantha, starts with an S, but either way, her role is very, is minimal in that this is, you know,
Right.
citizens that are appointed by council members who are supposed to give, you know, recommendations to the city on public art policy going forward.
I'd like to talk to you about that, actually.
Yes, I would like to talk to you about that too. So, but either way, it's, yeah, Monday, 6 o'clock.
We're gonna talk before then.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jessica Holland. I'm the Executive Director of C4 Atlanta. If you're not familiar with C4 Atlanta, we're an art service organization. Our primary focus is serving artists and helping them with business development. I guess I have really more of a question that is disguising a suggestion. Because I am working with artists and I'm looking at things like their budgets, and I know that, you know, last spring we did a survey where we sent out, we had over 200 respondents, artists living in Atlanta that said that they make under $25,000 a year. And then I also know in Philadelphia, the average mural that's paid for there costs about $30,000. And I'm looking at projects that are coming in that we're helping to augment through our fiscal sponsorship program, things that are happening on the Beltline, things that are happening with the city of Atlanta, so we can help artists kind of match the rest of that money that they're getting so they can pay themselves. My comment / suggestion is, what are we doing as a community to make sure that as sometimes artists are used as tools of revitalization, what are we doing to protect them when they move into a community and they help change a neighborhood or help revitalize a neighborhood? What are we doing to make sure that 10 years, 20 years, 30 years down the road, they can still afford to live in the city?
You want to say? I think that, I mean, it's very much obviously tied into the conversation around affordability that we had before. The artists are part of that discussion. Relative to the Beltline and any other project in the city, I mean, I think we have to pay artists what they need. Part of the Beltline, I mean, one of the critiques of it, of course, is that it spreads lots of things really thin and it doesn't pay artists what they deserve for the art. And so rethinking that, I think, would be smart. Investing in housing and workshops and stuff, a space for that. And I mean, that can be part of zoning, it can be part of investment. Those are kind of things we need to be hopefully looking at.
I think I'm probably representing the capitalists on the group, and I think it's helping the private sector development community understand the power and the benefit that having great art can be accretive to your project and make all the difference. So I think that's clearly just harnessing the power, making the case that it not only should be a part of your pro forma, but that it can make a tremendous impact.
But not only the art itself, but the space for artists in terms of how they can work.
And I think we have about 5 more minutes, so we'll just try to go through.
I have a last question.
Yeah, we got 5 minutes.
Okay, my name is Allie Sillins. I'm a transportation engineering student at Georgia Tech. And my question for you guys is, I guess what I've gotten most from this panel is that there are 2 big things that Atlanta needs to be a really revitalized city. And the first is good streets, and the second is good design. And 2 great advantages we have in our city are SCAD, which is producing great designers and artists every day, and Georgia Tech producing brilliant engineers. So my question for you guys is, what is the city doing and these community leaders to really take advantage of these talent pools that we have right here in Midtown when revitalizing our city?
Well, I'll speak to that, because that's one of the things I've been doing since I've gotten here, is really meeting with all these institutions. You mentioned 2 of them, but the others as well. We will soon, you know, have whole new ways of working together. The city planning department and those institutions and others, and everybody is really excited about this. It's a great point, and even starting in the spring of next year, you're going to see a lot of different kind of work between the city and these places that are producing such talent.
We have staff meetings every quarter, and I'm going to try really hard not to roll my eyes. But it's a constant introduction of new Georgia Tech students. That's who's coming into the ARC and rows. I'm really curious about what role SCAD's going to play moving forward. I think that we see some great design coming out of SCAD, when I think of SCAD pads, things like that, but we don't integrate that into our broader community. It's something that's going on over at SCAD, it's not taking place in the rest of the community. I think if we had some more vehicles for tactical urbanism in our community, if the walls weren't quite so high for that kind of imagining, we'd see SCAD out in the community a little more.
I would only add that, I mean, there's a lot of great institutions across the city. I would overlook the Atlanta University Center in Georgia State and others, Emory for sure, even though they're technically not in the city, but in the region of Emory's point. But Georgia Tech, I know, of course, and Georgia Tech has a very long history with engaging and working with the city of Atlanta and others on really bringing this sort of ideas and sort of generation of ideas of students to the real world. I worked in projects with MODA, while I was at Tech, with MODA, with Midtown, with Alliance, and others, and there were opportunities for students to engage in that. I've been on leadership of studios, teaching studios, or helping teach studios, or participating in reviews with students who are engaged out in the world. The power of academia, of course, is that you can think about big ideas, big bold ideas about the future, and you're not burdened with the political realities and the budget realities that sort of driven a lot of the conversation. And that's really powerful. We wouldn't be obviously talking about development without it. So, we need to find new ways to harness that energy regionally, not just in the city, but I think there are a lot of great things happening, I think, already.
Maybe we should do rapid fire on this last one,
Okay.
just to make sure everybody gets their question in. And yeah.
Good evening. I read your thesis, right?
Take them in a grain of salt.
Well, after I finished reading it, I had some questions. The first page talks about the complexities of contemporary urban life, including congestion, our cultural identity. You talk about the ecological consequences of sprawl. You talk about inner city gentrification and traffic congestion. On page 9, I think you define gentrification of neighborhoods by the middle class is homogenizing older communities, pushing up resident poor. So when I got through it, I could find solutions to congestion and ecological problems to sprawl, but not to gentrification. So I wonder how it solves or makes better gentrification.
How the Beltline is specifically? Okay. Well, start off, it was a graduate thesis, and so I understand your interest in that. I never knew we would actually be building it, so as a student, I do actually think that the Beltline plays a huge role in that, by amplifying that discussion. I mean, we wouldn't be having the discussion in a large way without the Beltline. Like I said, the grassroots movement that formed the Beltline included everyone. Everybody was a part of that movement, and that's why we have the tax increment, money to tax increment. That's why that voice is at the table. And compared to any other transportation project going on in the region, it's the only one that includes any notion of inclusiveness and affordability and anything like that. Look at the managed lanes that's under construction from 285 all the way out past Town Center Mall. Where's the displacement conversation there? Where's all that? So I'll have to say that I think that it is there, but I mean, we have to, like I said before, if we want the Beltline that we all envision, that was through there in the beginning, we have to demand that those policies, that we follow through with those policies and they're in place. The answer cannot be to not build a Beltline. The city is going to grow by however many millions of people in the next however many years. Anyway, the Beltline, the answer to gentrification and displacement is not to hold communities down. It's not to not provide parks and transit and grocery stores. It's not to suppress job growth and economic activity. The answer is financial. The problem is financial. It's rising taxes and rising rents. And so the answers have to address those things directly. Not building a trail or a greenway or a park doesn't really answer that problem. I'll say all that to say that we have this thing, it's underway, it's in the very early stages of its implementation. And we have to follow through with those policies. We're not done yet.
I just wanted to add something, having worked on the Beltline, and this issue came up several times when I worked there. One of the issues to really understand around gentrification is that in some of the neighborhoods, especially with the foreclosure crisis, some of those neighborhoods have lost between 20 and 40 and 50% of its population. And even if all the people that are there stay there and new people move in, you're talking about a 20 to 50% increase of new people. And that changes the culture within a neighborhood, even if not one person is displaced, because some of those neighborhoods were having those conditions and they got vacated. And so part of it is if you go around the different neighborhoods, you'll see a lot of vacant lots and boarded up houses. And if you were to count on every block how many of the houses are occupied, it might be less than those vacant lots. And so even when we come into a community, we're building affordable and we're building for home ownership. But even when we come in, people make assumptions about what we're doing to change their neighborhood and to change the character of it, because now all of a sudden Habitat's put in 20 lots or 30 lots, and it's because we are trying to rebuild those communities. So as those investments come in, there's got to be a really transparent conversation about the condition and the data in those neighborhoods. And I'm not even talking about for the people left in there, how many of those people are rental and transient. So there's got to be a conversation, and then the group that's left, the elderly, the folks who've been there 20, 30 years, are there solutions to keep those folks in? But recognize there may be some communities where today the perception is that that neighborhood's full, and when the Beltline comes in, all of a sudden, all these new people came in and we displaced people. But it really, part of that problem is that those neighborhoods were vacated and there's not people there. So there's a really great report that the city of Atlanta did on housing, and it by neighborhood gives the vacancy rates by parcel, and it shows you exactly the condition of those neighborhoods, which is what contributes to people disinvesting in them. And then as the city starts to reinvest in them, people just see the new people coming in. They don't necessarily see what was there before. So just a plug for that report, because it has lots of data and it's by parcel, by neighborhood, and very detailed.
And I really hate to do this, but we have to wrap it up. I mean, we have to. We're about to literally get kicked out of the show. I'm sorry. Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much for your time.